Obsessing about reaching the end destination of a bulk is a classic mistake. See, it's common to compare the absolute ends of lean or heavy body weights as if being at a certain weight indicates whether you're bulking or cutting, when in reality, the sole determinant is the process of manipulating calories, not your current body composition. A lean person can cut and a fat person can bulk, so you can manipulate goals whenever. Basically, if you're at 10% body fat but in a small surplus where you're putting on a maximum of 2 pounds of fat per month, it doesn't matter if you're not in bear mode. You're still effectively bulking, and the extra food intake is providing most of the recovery and fullness benefits. The fact that your leverages haven't upgraded yet is irrelevant. Let's call this bulk potentiation. Therefore, trying to rush into a heavy body weight is either due to pure impatience, false expectations of what bulking entails, diet laziness, or gluttony. So without gigabulking, it's entirely possible to regain the weight at half the rate at which you lost it, instead of rapidly gaining in 1 to 3 months through excessive binge eating, which won't significantly accelerate lean muscle growth, as new data seems to suggest. So with that in mind, if you are in a surplus, yet complain that you're not heavy enough, then you're clearly confused about a non-issue, because the surplus, which is your primary target, is the true measure of success, not your final body weight number before cutting. Similarly, if you manage to gain fat without even trying, when in the past you had to manipulate your diet in various unhealthy ways, then that too is a form of success. Naturally rebounding is not failure if the goal is to gain muscle. Failure lies in the inability to re-enter a surplus. And from what I've observed among former permabulkers, because let's keep it real, you won't stay that way forever due to health reasons, the vast majority of them can easily become big again if they chose to. Let's put it this way. If you've been consuming around 3,500 calories for the past 2 years and then cut down to a new lean maintenance of, let's say, 2,400, do you honestly think consuming another 900 calories will be tough? Hell no! Especially when you view the surplus as fuel for hardcore training. Bigger bodies naturally have bigger appetites, and the longer you train, the more your appetite should naturally grow, just like Goku and Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z. Any serious lifter can attest to what I'm saying. So if you can't eat big like your DL fat friend, then I believe you're not that jacked. And because bulking gets you jacked while holding you to the highest accountability of programming, since if you're not making gains from a surplus, then we know it's from the training, then it can obviously be concluded that bulkers, former or present, automatically have greater appetites because their evolved physiques demand it. In this way, we cannot revert to hard gainer thinking because now you've well surpassed that stage. You may not even realize it, but you become a man of new hunger. The only way you will lose that increased appetite is if you start losing muscle mass or permanently downsize for the long term. However, assuming you plan to maintain your size and get progressively bigger after each bulk and cut, always reaching higher peaks on each end, it's important to understand that your caloric needs will be boosted. It's like having a higher skill level, such as cooking in RuneScape. You're cooking the same amount, but now fewer foods are getting burnt. So the same effort is providing more favorable outcomes. Bulking operates in a similar way, and I would actually consider it a skill of sorts. This is also why former obese people are very cautious with specific diets or even afraid of bulking. They recognize the potential to regain crazy weight, considering they maintained a much higher set point in the past. And on that note, know that your body fat set points actually change over time, either in the direction of becoming leaner or fluffier, depending on how you navigate your life, training, and diet for years on end. It's not entirely genetically predetermined from day one. So whatever you currently consider as your peak bulk weight can eventually become your mid bulk weight. When you hit the peak, what happens after? You can attempt to maintain or slowly bulk from there, which can take double the time it took to reach that level of absolute fat gain, where now only a couple more pounds of fat are put on, right? So in the case of maintenance, That in itself is training you to hold on to that weight as a future reference point. And secondly, with slow bulking beyond, eventually you'll find yourself at least 10 pounds heavier, which is usually the true peak bulk weight. And that's when cutting typically begins. So if you manage to exceed your initial bulking goal, if you climbed up another fluffy cloud, then the previous top is now a checkpoint that's no longer a threat. Meaning when you start eating normally again, which weight class do you think will be easiest to maintain? That former cloud, aka your new body fat set point. For example, I've always been naturally lean. In fact, I had a six-pack before ever working out a day in my life. From day one, I was ripped with a small appetite, which allowed me to maintain a maximum of 12% body fat for most of my teenage life. Nowadays, I have a lot more trouble maintaining that exact same body fat, even though I was always like that. OGs will remember that I used to force feed myself. I often drank mass gainer shakes, downed straight olive oil, dunked sandwiches in water to gulp down more, ordered disgusting junk food on purpose, raced my food, you name it, I have done it. All to slowly gain weight over time. Because even when I was promoting bear mode at the start, I was only in the 170s and had trouble getting past 180. I even failed to reach my goal of 200 pounds in both 2016 and 2017. Basically, I was hovering between 181 and 186 for a good 2.5 years. But regardless, I still forced myself to bulk because I knew it was the optimal path for gains. And after embracing this for another 6 years, I'm a bulking veteran at this point, I finally reached a point where those previous heavy weights are no longer a struggle to hit. I now have a massive appetite, at least subjectively higher compared to what it used to be. So it takes far more discipline to hold back than to force feed. All those weird strategies that I used to incorporate are now completely out of the equation. Nowadays, I just eat a bit more of the same whole foods. So this starter skinny guy can now bulk to the 180s in less than 3 months without even trying. And another important reason for this is that through each bulk, I've gone beyond my comfort levels of fluffiness. Just to say, last year, I hit a milestone of 200 pounds, which is very heavy for someone who's 5'5". So put that into perspective. After getting that big, what do you think 185 or 190 is? Nothing by comparison. Even though there was a time where those same weights were legit goals. Now, I'll get there without even wanting to because my body's trying to climb back to 200. So anything less is a step down, but still remarkable in an absolute sense. So, what happens when we do get closer to this end stage? Well, because this is what peak performance looks like, it means that surplus or not, your body is in its most productive state for gaining muscle. Your strength is peaked, which means that every workout, as long as sufficient effort is present, is maximally stimulatory. With high energy levels and reserves of body fat that aid leverages, even if your daily diet isn't perfect, your workouts become more strenuous because you're pushing harder. And here lies the double-edged sword of bulking. Your own strength can make it difficult to recover, which is another reason why your body naturally craves more food. Unless you're bloat maxed, there will be diminished returns in becoming physically bigger to handle heavier weights or recover better. You reach a zone where nothing provides superhuman recovery or faster progress. And at best, it becomes just normal progress. And this is where main gaining can be useful. When bulked. Like you really don't need to shovel more food down your throat. In this way, bulking becomes both easier and harder simultaneously. Being fluffy or getting fluffier isn't really your problem, but recovery becomes more challenging. And relying on more food won't solve your progressive overload problems. Now, your programming needs to be dialed in just to achieve average gains. And if it's not optimized for your specific needs, you might not make any gains at all, despite being in a surplus. And this goes back to the theme of not wasting your bulk, because many do. Many just get fat only to cut down and realize They're the same darn weight. That's sad and represents the true challenge of bulking long term. Can you handle the programming demands of being a big boy? You might be benching well over 100 pounds more for reps, or repping your previous 1 rep maxes on multiple pulls, presses, etc. And oftentimes, hydration arguably becomes more important than sustaining a daily surplus because your body has enough fat. Whether you have 200 or 500 calories over that day or just keeping it the same maintenance level, probably doesn't matter as much as you think. High quality, long, consistent sleep is going to do more for you. And of course, fatigue management is number 1, but I won't cover that today. By the way, this is your last chance to get the 30% off Barbell Apparel's most popular line of performance-driven clothing. Their lightweight yet durable fabrics are designed to keep you cool and training at the highest level, like Navy SEAL Chad Wright, who recently ran a crazy 250-mile race in Barbell's ultralight gear. Join our community of athletes who make no excuses and settle for nothing less than the best. With a 365-day, no questions asked guarantee, you're covered. Link in the description box. At any rate, it's interesting that we can technically argue all these same points for being shredded. Any extreme body weight comes with its own unique side effects. When shredded, your body simply can't recover properly. So it's not the stimulus causing more fatigue, but rather you are more fatigued and have fewer reserves to draw upon. This means your programming must still be perfected to offset any pitfalls. So going back to bulking, whether you're on the extreme edge of bear mode or closing in on it, this phase won't last much longer anyway. So even if the last 1 to 2 months were harder, it doesn't change the fact that the grand journey of your bulk was relatively smooth. And that's where 80% or more of the gains came from. Also, the deep end of bulking is not inherently more difficult unless there was a whirlpool that sucked you in. But, whether you hit the wall or a couple meters away, there's not that much of a difference in terms of depth. Really, those who complain here just don't know how to program because they'd have the same problems whether shredding or maintaining at a standard fluffy body weight. Therefore, most of what I said today is all stuff you'd eventually have to deal with anyway, regardless of any body composition goals. Entering new weight classes may not make your journey easier. In fact, it can prevent you from understanding why your journey was so hard in the first place. So the natural order shouldn't be hard per se, but rather normal. And normal doesn't mean it's at a moderate speed. Often it's slow, and that's okay. Please see my recent video on adding plus ones. Once you reframe your mindset, you'll realize that beyond very basic bulking advice, what's going to hinder your progress 9 out of 10 times is bad programming. And that's why most of my videos emphasize this so strongly. Since the bulking experience, well, many of us have gone through it, and there isn't much to say. It's straightforward, and to be perfectly honest, most of you don't even have visible abs to begin with. You're already in bear mode. You already have the frame. You've already bulked. You are bulking. And for all you skinny guys, one proper long bulk will effectively resolve any hard gainer problems. Take it from me. Just commit to the bulk and you likely won't become obese. Instead, you'll make the best gains of your life. And if progress appears to stall sometimes, check your programming before blaming your diet. You know that's usually the issue when weight gain is occurring. So stop lying to yourself that nutrition needs work. Probably not. And bulking simply provides the opportunity to maximize your system without spinning your wheels. It never overrides programming fundamentals, especially as you become more seasoned in this lifting game. So is bulking easier or harder the longer you do it? For the most part, it's easier. It only becomes hard when you're likely fed up with being bear mode or when you're so strong that you need a psychological break. But beyond that, does this really matter? Next time around, you'll be refreshed, ready to surpass previous highs and become a wiser lifter. Even if gaining theoretically becomes challenging, it's still less hard in an absolute sense simply because you've been heavy before. Doesn't need to be more complicated than that. So with that said, let me know what you think about the difficulty aspect of bulking. How has this process changed for you the more you've done it? Share your thoughts down below, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.